No one has ever gotten strong or jacked by obsessing over protein absorption speed. You know, I had just made a video discussing why nutrition does matter, but it has been largely overrated in terms of its importance, or at least deep nutrition knowledge, and its importance for muscle growth, athletic performance, recovery, all those things. And again, I go back to that point that does it matter? Yes, obviously it matters. Nutrition affects your very health, your recovery, your energy, your mood. It affects all of these things. But the problem is that obsession over details that absolutely do not matter and that are based upon all sorts of unproven, in some cases completely untrue premise creates problems. And I'm sorry, but the simple reality is some of my strongest and most jack lifters don't know anything about nutrition. Okay? I literally have guys who are probably more jack stronger and leaner than some of you guys are, who aren't on gear, who don't track anything they eat. They couldn't tell you how many grams of protein they eat. They don't even know. And it's not to say that maybe a little bit of fine-tuning wouldn't help them get 1% better progress, but they don't care enough to, because they're already making good progress. And when you take a guy's 500 deadlift and get it to 550 in less than 6 months, they're usually pretty happy, especially if they haven't gained any body weight. When you take their 420 squat and you get it up to 460, they generally don't care. Especially if you did it at record speed. Right? When you put in 6 months more onto their max lifts than they've gained in the last 2 years, they don't really care. So let's come over to the point with some of this. What sparked this? I had a guy ask me in the comments, hey Jason, whole milk after you train, wouldn't that be detrimental to your gains because the fat would slow down the absorption of the protein? Okay. Now, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, if you think that that makes sense, then you're ignorant of the actual research. In other words, this is obsessing over minutia that, number one, don't matter, and that, two, are actually patently provably false. Okay? The idea that faster absorbing protein magically creates more muscle growth has been largely disproven in scientific literature. So why is this even a topic? Why is this even a topic? You know, the only people who care about protein absorption speed are bodybuilders who inject insulin with it. They're injecting fast-acting insulin. Okay, maybe the speed of that absorption might matter, but for everyone else, it actually seems to be quite the opposite. There's even compelling evidence, and I've seen Aragon link some of it. There's even compelling evidence that slower absorbing protein may produce a more pronounced anabolic effect over the course of a 24-hour period than the same quality and quantity of protein that's faster absorbing. Now we come over to the point of, but does that even really matter? Do you really think that matters that much? Probably not. Probably not at all. There's nothing magical about the immediate post-workout window for protein synthesis. It's not magical. Not saying it doesn't matter. It's a good time to get some protein in. Your carbs probably matter more than your protein at that point. But I digress. We're talking about fine-tuning minutia. We're talking about chasing a 1% difference in your results. Not making a 1% change in you, but 1% more muscle gains over the gains you might have gotten. That's what we're arguing about. You want to know what would matter more? Training better. Had you optimized your training a little bit more, you probably might gain 10 or 15% more muscle per week. Right? That's worth a hell of a lot more than optimizing your protein. Right? A hell of a lot more. So where should people be putting their efforts? It's in the training. But let's come over and let's look at the data. Someone asked me that question. Well, what does the research say? Because this has actually been directly studied. The actual muscle protein synthesis for post-workout milk has actually been studied in the lab. Lo and behold. When protein is equal, which means calories are not, whole milk produces a larger post-workout muscle protein synthesis response than fat-free milk. Holy shit. But it's slower absorbing. The fat slows down absorption. How could it possibly do that? That doesn't make sense. Well, you're arguing that the measured results in a lab don't make sense. Well, maybe it's because you don't understand what causes muscle protein synthesis. Maybe you don't know enough about nutrition to answer the question. And so here's the question. If you don't know enough about nutrition to understand why those results happen, then maybe you need to quit worrying about focusing on minutia of something that you don't even understand. Because let's be honest here, if you don't have a master's degree in sports nutrition, you probably don't have a working knowledge of nutrition. Damn, I said it. So most of the people even discussing this stuff aren't qualified to even discuss it. And if they are qualified to discuss it, what have even the experts, the leading experts in these fields said? Well, we're just chasing a 1% improvement. Okay, there are people who do their whole doctoral work in sports nutrition trying to chase a 0.5% improvement somewhere. Okay, that's all we're arguing about at this point. And you have to have an advanced degree to even understand it to that point. But let's speculate why. Well, maybe because the absorption speed isn't that important. Maybe it's the fact that you just consumed more calories post-workout that had the greatest impact. In other words, calories are anabolic. What? Yeah, calories are anabolic. All calories are anabolic. So if protein was equal, even if it's absorbing slightly slower, but there's more total calories coming in the same meal, in this case a lot more fat added in. So if you consume 20 grams of protein with 150 calories versus 20 grams of protein with 400 calories, which one's going to produce a larger spike in muscle protein synthesis? The higher calories. Food is anabolic. The more food you eat, the more anabolic it is. Now, we could sit around and argue about the minutia of it as carbs versus fat versus protein calories, which is the most anabolic per calorie. But that's not what was asked. It was, which one will create the best response post-workout? Well, the higher calories will. And that's pretty clearly demonstrated by the literature, and even when it's extra fat thrown in. When whole eggs have been consumed when compared to egg whites of equal protein content, the whole eggs produce a larger muscle protein synthesis response. But the fat's slowing the absorption. It doesn't matter. The overall net impact is still a larger response in muscle protein synthesis. Because again, food is anabolic. And let's come back over to the other data. There's been data that suggests that casein protein over a 24-hour period of time creates a larger net anabolic response than whey does because it absorbs slower. Speed is not everything. And in fact, really rapidly absorbed proteins end up mostly getting converted into carbs, because you can't utilize that many amino acids towards metabolic functions that quickly, so they end up getting broken down and turned into carbohydrates. Not saying that all of it doesn't have a benefit, but when you're exceeding the protein content of what you can absorb and utilize for those purposes in the same time period, you end up with more carbs. But that's normal. Most of us eat a lot of protein already, so we're already converting a lot of our protein to carbs. Gluconeogenesis would be the term. Right? Does any of it really matter? And I want people to think that through. Do you think, in the grand scheme of things, when calories and protein are equal and you're spreading your protein out through the day to any great extent, right? You're eating at least 3 big servings of protein a day, and you're eating mostly quality, high bioavailability proteins. Do you really think the absorption rate or the timing and all of this stuff that people want to argue about, do you really think it is going to have a measurable difference on your muscle growth and recovery? Probably not. I'm not saying it might not be a tiny fraction of a percent. But this is my point about nutrition being overrated. People will argue this shit ad nauseum. When if you had just trained harder and trained a little better, you would have gotten 10 times the extra results that optimizing the absorption rate and timing of your protein would have given you. All right? It's a misallocation of resources to stand around and worry about shit like this. It really and truly is. It's a misallocation of your resources. And this is why you guys say things like, I don't know, you say everyone should be able to deadlift 500 pounds. Yes, I do. And if you quit worrying about the wrong shit, you would be able to do it. You go down these long rabbit holes of evidence-based arguments that are best reserved for working on your doctoral thesis. In other words, if you want to have these sort of debates and arguments, that's what you need to make your career in, so that you can waste other people's time and argue points of academia with other academics and quit trying to inject it into anything useful for the layman and or the regular lifter or athlete, because it probably isn't that important. But people stand around worrying about it instead of saying, hey, maybe I should get my training dialed in better. Instead of wasting my energy on things that aren't going to matter that much or to any measurable degree. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.